What is going on, everybody? Game Magic around. Welcome to the final bonus episode of LEGO Indiana Jones 2: The Adventure Continues. Last time I showed off quick play mode, which it's quick play mode. There was pretty much nothing to show off in quick play mode. And today, for the fifth and final bonus episode, the final episode really of this walkthrough, I will be giving you my thoughts on the game and the walkthrough as a whole, because I always do this. If there are no credits to roll, then I will do it in post-commentary. So, here we are. Here are my thoughts. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the game, the story mode, and if you've been playing along and since the beginning, you know I have quite a lot to say about this game. So, without further ado, let's talk about the walkthrough. LEGO Indiana Jones 2: The Adventure Continues. Well, it took me over 2 years to finish a walkthrough that should have taken me less than one, but I finally did it. A 100% walkthrough for the longest game I have ever covered on my channel. And, okay, I've maintained a very professional approach to guiding people through this game. I've spoken my opinions on rare occasions, like before we were going to do Trial and Terror, that I was really set off by that level. But in general, I didn't really speak my opinions about the game. So now, it is finally time for me to express my opinions to all the people watching at home. So first off, let's talk about the story. Now, because this is a LEGO game based off of licensed property, I will not be judging the story itself. Because I love the Indiana Jones movies, not the fourth one. Even though the second movie went in an excessively dark direction, I still really, really like the original trilogy. And what I'm going to be judging is not the story itself. I'm going to be judging how the game parodies the events of the movies that it's based on. Specifically, the first three films, but even with the fourth, it's done horribly. Okay, you ready for me to rant? I'm going to rant. You ready? Alright, let's go. So the entire reason this game was made is because they wanted to make a game which centered around a Kingdom of the Skull, similar to Force Awakens and its subsequent LEGO game. The difference between LEGO Star Wars: The Force Awakens and LEGO Indiana Jones 2: The Adventure Continues is one's a very good adaptation of the movie, and the other one is just not. So, I mean, because, yeah, it makes more sense to make a separate game for the movie than just release DLC for the original, because then it wouldn't be the original adventures anymore. But for some reason, they also included the first three movies as well with this game. Not only is this a horrendous idea because the first game featured the original games, and it makes no sense for them to include... It makes no sense to include the original movies in a game where the fourth movie is the star of the show. But it also puts a lot of pressure on those first three movies, because they have to try and match the level of quality that was hit with the original game. The original game, it was so well made with how, not only in gameplay, but how it parodied the movies in a playful way, rather than just, like, I'm trying to think of an example. What's a good example that I can think of? I had a good example. Haha! You get into the Temple of Kali. How? Not through the palace, not through a secret passageway. Haha, you went into the palace through a cave right outside the palace. How did you get out? Haha, you didn't go through minecarts. You just walked right back out the cave and had a giant statue follow you. I'll talk about that a little bit. But anyway, they just didn't reach the level of quality that they reached it with the first game. Not even a little bit. And obviously it wasn't going to be as good as the first game. But they could have at least expended a little bit of brain power to try and make a good product for the first three movies. Okay, so we'll start with the story portion of all four interpretations, or six technically, since Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is split into three parts. So the original adventures felt like you were watching the movies in LEGO format, with a few exceptions, such as there was a shortened bridge battle for the sake of brevity, the absence of tension when the Grail Temple fall apart. They weren't trying to go for the same level of tension in the movie, because I think that was fine. Because in the movie, no spoilers, but there's a lot of tension between trying to get the Grail and leave, or just leave. And there's a lot of tension going on there, so they kind of hit it with the fact that, hey, Elsa grabs the Grail and she falls to the floor. It's not as, the tension isn't as drawn out as it is in the movie, which could be for better or for worse, but I don't know, that's for you to decide. But with the game, they decided to make very poor decisions with the execution of this. For instance, in the preface to Raiders of the Lost Ark, Brody tells Indy, you need to go find Marion to get the medallion. Which, okay, it's a shortened version, because in the original game, they actually had Indy talking to the other two guys, and Brody saying, hey, look, this is how the Staff of Ra works, and with the chalkboard and everything, and him going to get her. But In this one, a giant boulder appears out of nowhere and starts chasing Brody. What? When did this turn into a Tom and Jerry cartoon? Why would there be a giant boulder in the college? Is that your lazy way of trying to put the boulder in? Why didn't you just make a level around it then? Or how about in The Last Crusade when Brody canoes out into the middle of nowhere to pick up Sala and not Indy? Brody went to wellness with Indy in the movie. How about that iconic library scene, huh? X marks the spot and all that? No? Nothing? Okay. Or, here's a good one. Actually having challenges accurate to the movie in the Grail's Temple, like the Word of God, the Path of God, Breath of God, the Penitent Man will pass Jehovah in the Greek Latin alphabet, and all that, the Leap of Faith? Nothing? Okay. And since when were Henry and Elsa playing golf? Oh, of course, well, the first three movies underappreciate, the fourth movie overappreciates. I understand it's the center of the film, but when the heck did we have to repair a car in the movie? Did an entire level need to be dedicated to fighting a train? That never happened in the movie. There's no happy medium of important parts told well. It's either the first three movies don't hit on enough key points and lazily bridge the gaps between plot holes they forge, not staying true to the movies. It's like, hey, we're in Nepal now. How do we get to Cairo? Well, that's you to figure out. Hey, we're in Cairo now. Marion's been kidnapped. How do we get to the Well of Souls? Well, that's for you to figure out. Hey, we're in the Well of Souls, but they took the Ark. How did they take the Ark? How did they get it onto a truck? Well, that's for you to find out. And it's like, well, how did they get to Ark Island? Well, that's for you to find out. It's just. And then, of course, the fourth movie hits on too many plot points, even inventing new plot points for the sake of artificial elongation. Why? And don't throw the excuse at me, well, see, idiot, the movie's too long and so they can't do that. So boom, gotcha, exposed. See, everybody, see how much of an idiot it is? Now worship me, because I'm right and you're wrong. My defense against that is, no. If the game didn't limit each movie to 5 levels and had 6 levels, here's how you could have portrayed the fourth movie without artificial elongation. You ready for this? This is gold. So, here we go. Level 1 is the hangar. And then a cutscene plays about, they escape and then they go to Boomtown, and that can just be a comical cutscene, because that has no bearing on the movie. It's just I guess a funny little thing. So then another cutscene, because that could be the closing cutscene for level 1, and then you go to the level complete, and then the opening cutscene for level 2 can be Indy going to meet Mutt in the cafe. You don't need to have an entire level dedicated to fighting in the cafeteria. You just don't. And then level 2 can be the motorcycle chase. Then the closing cutscene to that one can be them going onto the train. That doesn't need to change, except for the train boss fight. That doesn't need to change. And then level complete. The opening cutscene for level 3 is them going to the asylum and discovering the clue to the tomb. And then that's level 3, exploring the tomb, because that's a pretty big part. That's where they find the crystal skull. Then the closing cutscene for that is the ensuing escape. You don't need to have a big cutscene for that one. And then the opening cutscene for level... Well, actually, yeah. The opening cutscene for level 4 can be at the camp. They meet Marion, or they meet Marion again, and Indy's tied up in the chair talking to Spalko, and then that can transition into level 4, which is Rainforest Rumble / Riverside Rush, and then the closing cutscene for that can be them starting their. I guess you'd have to. You don't need to have an entire level dedicated to the ants, so you can just kind of skip over that too. And then the opening cutscene for level 5 could be them going to Temple Tangle. Temple Tangle. And the last level can be a combination of just them arriving at Akator, essentially. And then the closing cutscene for that can be them, them entering the temple. Maybe you could have had the final level, because the final level needs to be Akator ambush, obviously. And then maybe you could have the final level actually them actually going through the temple and solving the puzzles, like the big door that was a really great mechanism, the big door and everything. And then you could end with the Spalko boss battle. But oh yeah, I almost forgot. The ending where they get married doesn't even happen. Did they use their brains at all when they made this story mode? What? No, the biggest thing is, hey, Indy and Marion are now married. Well, where's that? It just ends suddenly with no explanation on top of Akator. What? The interdimensional being flies up for a split second, waves, and then just flies away? What? Were you using your brains at all? But do you at least see how easy it would have been to limit it to 6 levels per movie and not split the movie into 3 parts? It was possible. If they wanted to cover every minute detail, the game should have just been about the 4th movie, and they should not have included they should not have included the first 3 movies. But if you want to include the first 3 movies, you have to make it even. You could have easily split Kingdom of the Skull into 6 cohesive parts with cutscenes in between, and everything would have been fine. Mostly. And they could have actually handled all the details like that. But they included the first 3 movies as well, so they just kind of backed themselves into a corner. But while the story part of story mode is laughably offensive in almost every way, the gameplay is just as bad. Well, some levels are. Some levels like Hanger Havoc, Doom Tomb, Repair Scare, even though it's fabricated to illuminate the story, Temple Tangle, Mapper Mystery, Wrong Gone Wrong, even though ultimately useless and inaccurate to the movie, and Brewell Blaze used some pretty cool puzzles and almost, though not quite like the original game. But the game focused far too much on combat gauntlets and vehicle gauntlets centered around a wave-based system. The LEGO games had never been about fighting off waves upon waves of enemies. I mean, sure, you had the major top battle and you did fight enemies, and that was fine. But there weren't waves upon waves of enemies which overshadowed the puzzles. LEGO games have always been about smashing the environment around you and solving LEGO-based puzzles. I mean, what were they thinking with these story mode levels? And something else, and I promise it. This will be the last talking point that I have for story mode. Then I'll talk about some other stuff. The constant, never-ending outpour of boss fights. Boss fights. Of course, the original game had its share of boss fights. The most memorable ones for me are Enemy Boxer. That was an iconic boss fight. Molaram from Temple of Doom, and then the truck and tank chases from Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade. However, the original game's boss fights didn't feel contrived, that they weren't forced, they didn't invent new enemies to fight for the sake of gameplay. Yeah, you had to fight the Grail Knight, and that didn't really happen in the movie. But at least it made sense. Like, seeing as he mistook Indy, because the whole concept is he raises his sword, and then he falls back in the movie, because he mistook Indy for a knight who had come to challenge him. If only one boss fight out of all 18 levels felt contrived, that's a pretty good balance of gameplay. But in the sequel, they decided to step up the boss fights, just as with the vehicle sections, way too far into the next level. Each section has you fight some form of boss. None of them make sense. None of them. Except for Major Shot. That one's not too bad. That one's actually pretty cool. But the concluding boss fights makes absolutely no sense. Why are Indy and Mutt fighting a crane? A crane! Did the developers decide they didn't want to use their brain that particular day? What the heck? The train ride was something they used to transport from one location to the other, not to create a contrived boss fight where you decided to split Kingdom of the Skull into 3 parts. Oh, but fear not, because it's about to get worse. Next up, we have the giant Ant-Man. Okay. At the very least, this one makes a hair more sense than the train fight. I can't even believe I said that sentence. In the movies, the characters encounter giant killer ants, and it's probably my least favorite scene just from the movie, just because it doesn't relate to the rest of the movie. Kind of similar to the dummy town, the mannequins and everything. But this one was grotesque. Like, I mean, they've always had, indie movies have always had some form of creature, like snakes from Raiders, bugs from Temple of Doom, and then the rats from Last Crusade. But it just doesn't feel. It didn't feel. The only purpose was to kill off Domchenko, and it was just. I did not like watching that. But in the game, it's taken to absurd levels, and the ants form together like heroes and nanobots from Big Hero 6 to form a giant admin-like creature from Minecraft Story Mode, and a shark! Okay, I'm sure the shark was a nod to Jaws, but it still doesn't make any sense. How did these ants form together to create a giant man? And at the end of it, it doesn't even matter because it's the ants who take him away anyway. And I guess the most sensible of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is Spalco's boss battle. It makes a tad more sense because, of course, Spalco wants the knowledge of the aliens. Interdimensional beings, in point of fact. And so it would make a little bit more sense for her to be able to pull all these insane stunts. That said, though, while it can be justified, it's not how the movie goes down. Whereas the first game puts in effort for the dramatic and emotional moments, so they could have done something to mirror the scene from where Spalco. Like, they've always... Last Crusade, they're not going to show any blood or anything, but in the movie, Donovan shoots Henry Jones, and that's Indy's incentive for go get the Grail, save your father, but also give it to me. So that's his incentive for getting the Grail. And in the game, they did it playfully. Donovan fired the pistol at Henry, and then the Lego legs fell off, and they started walking around on their own. So it was funny to see that, but it still held emotional weight for the target audience they were going for. So they could have easily done something like that with the interdimensional beings with Spalko, when she interacts with the interdimensional being, rather than making her the final boss. And now we arrive at the original trilogy's boss fights, upon where we engage in a whole new level of stupid. So, let's start with Raiders of the Lost Ark, shall we? Raiders of the Lost Ark contain a giant electric ghost in the form of Belloc. Okay, again, we have the were you using your brain on that particular day issue. Although, credit where it's due, it at least spins on what happens in the movie. While it's still stupid and moronic, and I dislike it immensely, it does feature some pretty cool puzzles to solve, so I can't hate it as much as some others. Moving on to Temple of Doom, however, we encounter what could possibly be the runner-up for the most brainless LEGO boss fight, second only to the Crane Brain Fail. No, I didn't misspeak. So what do we have? We have Molar Rampage. Yeah. Forget the idea that the Temple of Doom was a cult where children were in the rock mines, and then they were trapped in the rock mines, and then they were sacrificing people to appease Kali, Kalima, Shakti, and all that. But forget all of that. Nah. The temple entrance is a cave right outside the palace, and there's no minecart chase, no bridge battle, or anything. What happens instead? The Kali statue comes to life and attacks everybody, and an elephant crushes the Hughes. What the heck are you thinking? I genuinely think you went into autopilot mode on that day when you came up with this idea. It's an insult to the finale of the movie. Do you know how long they tried to get that bridge shot in the movie? That's a whole behind-the-scenes featurette on the bonus disc for the Blu-ray collection, about how they had to build animatronics to place on the bridge when the bridge snaps in half. So they had to make all they only got one shot at this, because once you break the bridge, you can't put it back up. I mean, I guess you could, technically, but it wouldn't be worth the work. So they only had one shot they only had one chance to get this shot correctly. So they set up all the dummies, set up all the robots so that their animatronic legs could flip in the air, so it actually looked like people were falling down. It all came down to one little blow to make the bridge collapse, and if it didn't work, too bad. But it worked very well. And the original game paid homage to that scene. The sequel, on the other hand, what's in the sequel? A massive statue which you can crawl through! But wait, for we have one more boss battle to talk about. The Donovan boss battle, and it could possibly be the most offensive one yet. Well, technically it's not as offensive as the Temple of Doom boss battle, but because The Last Crusade is my favorite of the movies, it resonates much more strongly with me. So Donovan drinks the wrong cup, and rather than instilling a sense of fear for choosing poorly, or establishing a real knight at all, he evolves into a wind demon, and creates a vortex of metal objects. Now, the boss fight itself is pretty cool, but the reasoning and everything behind it is awful, and the aftermath is even worse. So what happens when you defeat him? He spins off the edge of the platform. Because that was a satisfying conclusion. The thing is, too, Donovan barely appeared throughout this story, so why should we care? We cared in the movie and the original game, but why now? Oh, but let's continue, because we're still not done. Then, after he falls into the abyss, the temple starts to collapse for absolutely no reason. Why does the temple collapse? Your guess is as good as mine. No one crossed the seal like in the original game and movie, so why is it collapsing? Who cares? Explosions are cool, right? No! Explain! Oh, but we're still not done. Then, Indy and Sala leave without the Grail, which is the entire reason they entered the temple in the first place, to retrieve the Grail, which is bad in and of itself because they didn't establish an emotional reason for pursuing the Grail, which is what made the movie and original game great. But here, just go get the Grail. Just do it. Just go get the Grail. I mean, yeah, I understand that in the movie and game, they leave it behind in the end. They have to leave it behind. It does help convey the messages of the movie. But they still initially take the Grail, but let's continue. So they leave the temple, and then they find Henry Jones and Elsa playing golf! Golf! Yeah, my son's risking his life to get the Grail, but let me just play golf to pass the time. Why is this so casually done? This doesn't convey the message of the movie. What the
Okay, I'm calm now. I'm done ranting about story mode now,
and I'm gonna drop this stupid voice. I'm going to stop ranting about story mode now, because you can probably tell I was getting a little heated with that, because... Okay, story mode only makes up a small percentage of the game, because for every 5 story mode levels, there are 5 treasure, 5 bonus, 1 super bonus level, events, characters and vehicles to unlock, and color bricks to collect. And on top of that, the bonus levels actually feel like classic LEGO levels. There's puzzles, you get to smash a bunch of objects, there's cool locations you get to go to, and the bonus and treasure mode levels, specifically the bonus levels, because the treasure mode levels are just everything LEGO games are, except limited by the story mode levels. It's kind of like what Halo Reach did with trying to unify the maps for campaign and multiplayer and firefight, when it only really works well for one, sometimes for none. But anyway, okay, so speaking of Halo Reach, the gameplay of the bonus levels actually feel like classic LEGO games rather than a match of Halo Firefight. So the gameplay isn't all bad, it's just that the worst parts stick out more than the excellent parts, and I really, really wish that the story mode levels took on the same style as the bonus levels. Some of them are fun to play, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this, I wouldn't have made this walkthrough and dedicated almost 2 years to trying to finish it, but of course, the highlights of the game's playsets are the open worlds for each film that you can explore. Now, I know you're going to tell me some people prefer that the more menu-based system for level selection, but I think that these open worlds are very natural and very cool. They're a fantastic evolution for gameplay, because each area of this open world is uniquely themed. Some do it better than others. For instance, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull Part 1, College Town is completely different from everything else. You've got the hangar area, you've got Doomtown over there, you've got another hangar, so even though it all has a very... the color scheme blends together for a lot of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull worlds, but once the levels open up once you get to the original trilogies, it really starts to differentiate. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Nepal, snow, Cairo, desert, Ark Island, very mystical, and the docks are very, very dimly lit, and the Hovitos Island, so they're all very creatively made, and they're all different from one another. They don't just blend together. Some of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull areas do, but for the most part, they don't just blend together. And I mean, if the only thing you could do is transfer between levels, then yeah, I'd say, just make it a menu-based system. But the inclusion of the events, the races, statue destruction, fire extinguishing, whack-a-mole, amongst other things, they bring life to these worlds, especially when you just fly overhead or you just drive around and smash everything. Because if you want to drive around and just smash everything in sight, you totally can. There's a lot of freedom in these open worlds, and finding new levels in the world was really cool. Unfortunately, I kind of ruined that for you guys because, of course, there's a walkthrough up for everything. But hey, at least now you won't get lost. I'm not helping myself out here, am I? Anyway, okay, and if you're gonna try and tell me the open world content is stupid, it'll never return, I would love to hear you try and explain to me why they have included an open world for nearly every LEGO game after this one. Well, okay, after 2011, I should say, because LEGO Harry Potter did have a sort of hub feature, but Clone Wars and Pirates did not. Starting in 2012, with LEGO Batman 2 DC Superheroes, and constantly going forward, they all have an open world feature. So clearly they realized they did something right with this game. But of course, the best and most expansive feature in this game is the level builder. I won't go too much in depth about that here, since I still have an entire series which I'll be dedicating to that feature debuting next Saturday, but I'll cover the basics. I love it. I'm sure you can't create levels akin to the story mode levels because there's no way to model detail environments or carve out mountains. I mean, you have the landscaping tool, and that's a really cool feature. I'm glad they had the landscaping. That was a really nice touch. But you can build levels akin to the bonus levels, because Traveler's Tales actually built all the bonus levels with that level builder. And some really cool creations can have and will come out of that. It's the first time a LEGO game has tried something where you can just freely build whatever the heck you want and wherever the heck you want. It's awesome. It's a great way to bring the creativity associated with LEGO into their games, because LEGO has always been built off the premise, haha, that you can build whatever you want with the LEGO pieces. I mean, there's playsets and everything, and it's really cool. Like, I have a lot of LEGO Indiana Jones playsets, but it's also really cool to just build whatever you want with Legos. But it's not perfect. I do have 2 complaints, and those 2 complaints are aiming abilities and lack of an online feature. Don't get me wrong. The ability to hold down the action button and aim whatever you have, be it a pistol or a whip or a sword or something like that, that's a really cool feature that they added. I'm glad they added that, because even though it was cool to have a whole select areas you can throw it thing when in the original ventures, it's still better to be able to control where you want to throw it, I think, at least for me. But I mean, you saw it in the first bonus episode when I was trying to put a socket on top of another socket. The hardest thing about this level builder is trying to place a socket on top of another, because each square in the grid is so ridiculously small, it's very easy to mess up the placement, which delays progression of the level. However, that is very minor and doesn't affect the overall experience too bad. I mean, it's just so annoying because you gotta keep spiraling around in circles until you line it up perfectly, and then by that point, it's just, oh my god, just line up. Whew, but maybe that's just a personal pet peeve of mine. The second problem, however, is something I've heard countless times about this game, and while it doesn't affect me all that much, because I never really uploaded any of my Super Mario Maker levels, I guarantee you, because I've heard it before, I guarantee you that at least one of you watching is desperate to share their levels with the world. And the only way to do that is to have someone come over to your house and play. There's nothing wrong with that, because I much prefer real-life interaction to online interaction. And it's really fun to have friends come over, and vice versa. But it's a big misstep to not feature an ability to upload custom levels to a sharing site. I mean, that was the big draw of Super Mario Maker, the ability to share your creations with the world and play other people's creations. I never really played that much in Super Mario Maker. I just built levels, and occasionally I would play an online level to test myself. So I'm just surprised as to why it's not in this game. And if you're gonna tell me, well, there were no online capabilities with this game, so again, I prove to how much better I am at everything than you are, and how wrong you are. Get exposed. There is a feature to play with each other in-game via Xbox Live. This is not constant across all platforms, I know, but the ability is there, so they weren't limited by anything. It was a conscious choice not to have a feature to upload levels to a sharing site. It doesn't affect me at all. I just think it would have been a really, really nice touch. So in summary, LEGO Indiana Jones 2: The Adventure Continues can be judged in two different ways, with two very different verdicts. If you judge it as an Indiana Jones game, it is an insulting piece of certifiable garbage to the movies it is, quote-unquote, paying homage to. But if you judge it as a LEGO game, it is absolutely revolutionary. It introduced the concept of the open worlds for these games, the enhanced reticle that I briefly mentioned. And it clearly made an impact because those things are still around to this day. The story mode, as I said, is insulting, but overall the gameplay is really, really great, and the level builder is the best thing about this game. It's just such a shame that it never returned, but I guess it returned in a big way in terms of LEGO Worlds. I just think it would have been so cool if they had that for each subsequent LEGO game, because it was such a big step in the right direction for these games. Overall, I'd give it I think 8 out of 10. It's good in terms of gameplay, open world concepts, and the level builder, but it's severely brought down by its awful story mode. Anyway, I'm done ranting. So as you know, my 100% walkthrough serve a few purposes. 1, helping you guys 100% the game if you already have it. 2, allowing myself a nostalgic trip down memory lane. 3, hopefully cheering a few people up. And 4, helping those who are on the fence about this game make a conclusive decision. So would I recommend this game to you guys? Absolutely. Why? Because it's an open world game. I was focusing on just getting between levels, but I mean, you can feel free to speed around, fly around, time yourself with the races, anything you want, really. The open world doesn't limit you with anything. You can do pretty much whatever you want to. You can replay the levels. You can't replay levels with different characters. That is a shame that you can't go into the levels. Like, there's no free play option to go into the levels with different characters and just mess around and blow stuff up with the bazooka. I guess you can kind of do that with Build Your Own Adventure, and that is cool. If you bring a bazooka trooper into some of those levels, and it's just, have fun. I just think I like what they were trying to do with the treasure mode levels. I just think maybe free play. I think they made a good choice going back to free play mode for future games, because it works well for this game. The treasure mode does, but it was a very, very good decision that they went back to free play mode for future games. And of course, the level builder allows for total creative freedom. So if you're really creative and you couldn't care less about the main story mode and subsequent bonus levels, this is a perfect game for you. And if you ever do decide to play the main story mode, well, you have a full walkthrough my 117 episode long walkthrough to help you through every step of the way, should you need to. In other words, how you play is totally up to you, and you just happen to have a guide here should you need it. Although I would imagine that if you've made it this far, you probably used it for pretty much the whole thing. And I do apologize that it took over 2 years to finally finish this blasted walkthrough, but it's done. The biggest walkthrough I left unfinished is finally 100% completed, and I can finally, after so long, I can move on knowing that I finally finished it. That makes me happy. But anyway, that is it for this last episode of LEGO Indiana Jones 2, The Adventure Continues. I'm happy to say goodbye, but at the same time, I almost don't want to because of how much fun I've had. I know I went on a big rant earlier about story mode, but I've had a lot of fun recording videos for this game. And hopefully it was helpful for you guys. I really do apologize for it taking so freaking long to finish, but it's done now. So I would like to thank you all so much for watching. If you've been here since the very if you've been here since episode 1, more power to thank you for sticking through 2 years of off and on again with this series. Thank you for sticking through all the way until the end. We've made it, and so have you. If you're just joining us recently, still props to you. Thanks for checking out the walkthrough. If you're new to the channel, I cover a lot of different games from my childhood. I do plan on covering more LEGO games in the future. In fact, later this year, to conclude 2017, I will be finishing LEGO Batman the video game, which is one of 2 walkthroughs, excluding Chicken Little, that I have yet to conclude. So stay tuned for that. That'll be the coup de grace of 2017. The first episode that I will release again of LEGO Batman the video game will release on the 1st of November. So stay tuned for that. Mark your calendars if you're excited for more LEGO content. As for other series, the next 2 walkthroughs are going to be Super Mario Galaxy and then a Let's Play of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. If you want more LEGO Indiana Jones 2, I'm going to be starting Project Creator, which is a series where I just build a bunch of levels. So that's going to be fun. I also I'm in the process of doing a Terraria Survival Let's Play, weekly Hunger Games videos, weekly Splatoon series. It's going to be awesome. There's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, and just thank you for being with me throughout this crazy journey that is known as LEGO Indiana Jones 2, The Adventure Continues. So thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for my next walkthroughs. And until next time, this has been Gaming Magic 13, signing off for the last time. I don't usually make my finales this big of a deal, but this has been a big part of the channel. It's been here for over 2 years. Saying I hope you have a phantasmagorical day, and I will catch you all next time for Super Mario Galaxy and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or on November 1st for LEGO Batman the video game, whatever you decide to stick around for. Goodbye!